The air smelled of dust, sweat, and something sharp, like metal left too long in the sun. Voices clashed together in the open bazaar, rising and falling like restless waves. Vendors shouted prices, children darted between legs, and somewhere in the distance music struggled against the roar of the crowd. But in the far corner, past the stalls of neon fruit and holographic fabrics, there was no music, only the crack of leather against flesh. The first sound was loud enough to turn heads. The second kept them watching. They gathered in a half circle, eyes wide, some laughing, some grimacing. At the center, under a single flickering light, stood a tall man with a whip coiled in his hand. His smile was the kind that made your skin itch. Chained to a rusted metal post, knees in the dirt, was a woman, not human. Her skin shimmered faintly as if starlight was trapped beneath it. Strange markings curled around her jaw and down her neck, glowing faintly whenever the whip struck. Her silver eyes stayed fixed on the ground, refusing to meet the crowd's gaze. A sign above her read, $1 and one whip, fun for the whole family. The laughter wasn't cruel in a loud way. It was worse. Low chuckles, knowing smirks, people trading coins like they were buying candy. Each dollar bought a moment of power, a moment to make the alien woman flinch. From the far edge of the market, Rufi stopped walking. He'd been here less than an hour, a backpack slung over one shoulder, looking for a mechanic who could fix his ship's broken navigation core. But the noise had pulled him in. The kind of noise you felt before you understood it. His eyes found her instantly. Nashat. He didn't know her name yet, but he would never forget her face. Another crack split the air. She didn't cry out, didn't even move, just tightened her jaw and let the heat fade from her skin. The man with the whip turned to the crowd. "Step right up. $1 gets you a memory you'll tell your friends about." A boy, maybe 14, handed over a coin. He raised the whip awkwardly, missed the first time, then laughed as he tried again. The crowd clapped like it was all just harmless sport. Rufi's stomach churned. This wasn't sport. This wasn't fun. This was humiliation with a price tag. He took a step closer. The crowd shifted, parting enough for him to see the dirt under her nails, the faint tremor in her arms where the chains pulled her forward. And still, she didn't look up. "Hey." The word left his mouth before he thought about it. The whipmaster's eyes landed on him. "You buying or just staring?" Rufi's hands curled into fists. The man was taller, broader, the kind of person who knew how to throw someone into the dirt without breaking a sweat. Around him, the crowd's interest sharpened. They were sensing a new kind of entertainment. He could walk away. He should walk away. This wasn't his fight. But Rufi's feet carried him forward anyway. "Untie her," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. The laughter came first, rolling through the crowd in the warm, ugly waves. Someone muttered, "Another alien lover." And someone else whistled. The whipmaster tilted his head, amused. "That's not how it works. You want her free? You pay for the whole show." "How much?" Rufi asked. A murmur ran through the crowd. The man licked his teeth, calculating. "More than you can afford." For the first time, Nashat's gaze lifted. Silver eyes locked on his, sharp and searching. It wasn't gratitude she gave him. It was a warning. And still, Rufi took another step forward. One wrong move and the entire market could turn on him. But he'd already made up his mind. The air was about to crack again, only this time it wouldn't be the whip. The crowd wasn't a wall. It was a living thing. It breathed, shifted, tightened as Rufi moved forward. Boots scraped against gravel, shoulders bumped into him, and every brush felt like a warning. "Don't move," he said. The word came out steady, but his pulse was a drumbeat in his ears. Someone in the back laughed. "Look at this hero." Another voice, sharper. "He's gonna regret that." Rufi kept walking. The whipmaster stood in the center like a king on his throne of dirt, the whip dangling loose in his hand. His smirk didn't fade as Rufi approached. It grew, curling at the edges like smoke. "You lost, stranger?" the man asked. Rufi's gaze flicked past him to Nashat. She hadn't moved since he first saw her. Her silver eyes were half-lidded now, the glow from her skin dim, but the alien markings across her cheekbones caught the light like threads of molten glass. They were beautiful, and they were bruised. The kind of bruises that didn't happen in one day. He looked back at the man. "Let her go." The whipmaster chuckled, the sound low and almost friendly. "Let her go? This is just entertainment. No harm in a little fun, right, folks?" The crowd's agreement was a wave of noise, quick and eager. Looks like she's had enough fun for a lifetime, Rufi said. The man's smile thinned. She's here willingly. The way he said it made the crowd laugh again. Rufi caught a glimpse of coins changing hands on the edge of his vision, like bets were already being placed. He tried to read Nashat's face. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't even asking for help. But there was something there, buried deep, like a spark smothered under layers of ash. "Walk away," someone muttered behind him. "That alien's not worth it," another voice added. Rufi ignored them. He could feel their eyes on his back, the shift in energy. This wasn't just about her anymore. If he pushed, he'd be pushing against all of them. The whipmaster stepped closer, his shadow falling over Rufi. "You don't know the rules here, stranger. This..." He lifted the whip, letting it uncoil with a hiss. "Isn't your business." Rufi's jaw tightened. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe he could turn around right now and be just another face in the crowd. The smart move. The safe move. But the image wouldn't leave him. The way she knelt in the dirt, the faint tremor in her arms, the silent defiance in her eyes. He took another step forward. The whipmaster's gaze narrowed. The crowd drew in tighter, the air pressed heavier. Somewhere in the mix, Rufi caught the scent of engine oil and fried street food from nearby stalls, clashing with the copper tang of blood. He didn't stop until he was close enough to hear Nashat's breathing, shallow, controlled. "Move aside," the whipmaster said. Rufi's voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise. "No." A silence fell over the circle. Even the vendors beyond the crowd seemed to hesitate, sensing something shifting. Then Rufi stepped forward, past the invisible line that separated the audience from the show. Boots sinking into the packed dirt, he came to stand between Nashat and the man with the whip. The circle was his now. The silence didn't last. It broke in fragments, murmurs, snickers, the shuffle of feet as the crowd adjusted for a better view. Rufi could feel the weight of their stares, but it was the whispers that stuck like thorns. "That's her, the thief from the docks." "No, no. She killed one of her own." "Please, she's a smuggler. Brought disease with her." The stories twisted, each more poisonous than the last, yet none sounded certain. Every voice added a new layer to the picture they wanted Rufi to believe. That Nashat was dangerous, undeserving, something less than human. The whipmaster grinned, like the rumors were his personal music. "See? She's not worth your trouble." His tone was bait, mocking, confident, pushing Rufi to either fight or fold. Rufi glanced back at Nashat. Up close he could see how the dirt clung to her skin, how the glowing markings along her jaw pulsed faintly with each breath. There was a quiet symmetry to her face, the kind that didn't beg for pity but demanded you notice. She wasn't begging now either, she just watched. Silver eyes locked on him, measuring him as if deciding whether he was just another spectator with a savior complex, or something else. "Why doesn't she speak for herself?" someone in the crowd called out. Another voice answered before Rufi could. "She's mute." Lost her voice when her planet burned. A ripple of ahs and cheers ran through the onlookers, but Rufi caught the way Nashat's jaw tightened. That rumor, at least, was a lie. The whipmaster twirled the leather in his hand. "You want to be her hero? Then pay the price, or get out of my circle." "How much?" Rufi asked again, this time without blinking. The man's grin widened. "Too much for a stranger. Unless..." He leaned forward, his breath hot and sour. "You've got $1. Then you get one whip. Your turn to make her dance." Laughter erupted around them, thick and eager. Rufi's fingers curled. For a moment he imagined the sound of the whip in his own hands, but not striking her. Striking him. Striking anyone who thought this was entertainment. But that wouldn't free her. The man's eyes glinted with challenge. "Well, you going to play or just stand there?" Rufi took one slow breath. He knew the crowd wanted a show. They wanted to see him either humiliate her or be humiliated himself. Either way, they'd get their money's worth. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a single worn dollar. The paper was creased, edges softened by too many hands before his. He held it up so the whipmaster and everyone else could see. "I'll pay," Rufi said. The crowd roared its approval, but as the whipmaster reached for the money, Rufi didn't take the weapon. He didn't even glance at it. "I'm buying the key," he said. The laughter stopped. The whipmaster's grin froze, like someone had pressed a blade to it. "The key?" he repeated, his voice low as if the word itself was an insult. "That's right," Rufi said, the dollar still between his fingers. The crowd exchanged puzzled looks. Then the laughter started again, this time sharper, mockery instead of amusement. "Buy the key?" "Let him try, see what happens." "He's not from here, is he?" The whipmaster stepped closer, boots grinding into the dirt. "You think she's yours for $1? "I think no one here deserves to hold that whip," Rufi replied. A few gasps slipped through the crowd. The man's jaw tightened. "You're brave. Or stupid." He plucked the dollar from Rufi's hand, rolling it between his fingers before sliding it into his vest pocket. "Fine," he said finally, voice dripping with false generosity. "Let's make a trade. You get your key, and you take everything that comes with it." The crowd loved that. The air thickened with their anticipation. Rufi could feel it, dozens of eyes like vultures circling fresh prey. The whipmaster crouched, reached into a pouch on his belt, and pulled out a jagged piece of metal, half rust, half lockpick. He dangled it just out of reach, then let it fall into Rufi's palm. "Congratulations," he said. "She's your problem now." Rufi turned to Nashat. Her wrists were bound by thick iron cuffs, the chain digging into her skin. He slid the key into the first lock. It resisted, then clicked open with a sound far too small for the weight it carried. The second cuff fell away. For the first time, Nashat's arms dropped to her sides. She didn't rub the marks the shackles had left. She didn't thank him. She just straightened, shoulders squaring, her silver eyes never leaving his. Rufi extended a hand. "You can walk now." She glanced at it, then at him, an unreadable expression flickering in her gaze, before stepping forward on her own. The whipmaster chuckled behind them. "Don't think this ends here, stranger! She walks with you! You'll learn why we kept her chained!" Rufi didn't look back. He moved through the crowd, every step an act of defiance. The people parted reluctantly, their faces a mix of curiosity, contempt, and quiet warning. Somewhere in the press of bodies a voice whispered, "He won't last the night." The market's noise faded behind them, but the weight of eyes didn't. Rufi could feel it, shadows clinging to their heels, whispers curling in the dark like smoke. Nashat walked a step behind him, her pace steady, despite the raw marks on her wrists. She didn't speak, didn't stumble. She moved like someone who had learned long ago not to show weakness, even when it burned. The narrow streets here were different from the market. Quieter, lined with shuttered stalls and flickering hollow signs that painted the walls in broken colors. Somewhere above, old air vents hissed like snakes. "You've got people watching us," Rufi murmured without turning his head. "I always do," Nashat replied, her voice low, melodic, threaded with an accent that curled around each word. It was the first time he had heard her speak. He risked a glance over his shoulder. Two figures stood at the far end of the street, too still to be casual pedestrians. "Friends of yours?" he asked. "Not the kind that buy you flowers?" They turned left, slipping into an alley so narrow Rufi's shoulder brushed the damp wall. A broken street lamp swung overhead, creaking in the wind. "You didn't have to step in," Nashat said after a moment. "It's not your fight." "I was there," he replied. "That made it my fight." Her silver eyes flicked toward him, unreadable. "You'll regret it." The sound of footsteps echoed behind them, slow, deliberate, not hiding anymore. Rufi's jaw tightened. He'd been in enough bad situations to know when the air changes, when danger stops pretending to be distant. "Keep walking," he said. They moved through a web of back streets, but the pursuers stayed close. At one corner, a third shadow joined them, blocking the way back. "3," Rufi muttered. "Maybe more." "They won't stop," Nashat said. "Not until—" She caught herself, eyes narrowing. "Not until they have me." They reached a crossroads where the alleys widened slightly into a forgotten courtyard. Rusted doors lined the walls. Broken crates and trash lay scattered in the corners. No easy exits. The first figure stepped into the light, one of the market men, face half hidden under a hood, whip coiled at his side. Behind him the other two emerged, forming a slow circle. "Told you," Nashat murmured. Rufi shifted his weight, ready for whatever came next. "Yeah," he said. "But they didn't tell me you'd have company." The whip uncoiled with a hiss. The man grinned. "You should have left her in the dirt, stranger. Now you're both going back." Rufi glanced at Nashat, his voice low. "You got anything that might scare them off?" Her gaze locked on his. "Yes," she said. "But you won't like it." Then the glow under her skin began to spread. The glow spread fast. It pulsed under Nashat's skin, racing along the strange markings on her face and arms like liquid light. Silver bled into white, then into a searing blue that made the shadows around her twist and recoil. The three men hesitated. Rufi didn't. He had seen that look before, not the glow, but the stillness in her posture, the gathering storm right before it breaks. "What's going to happen?" he asked under his breath. Her lips curved into something between a warning and a smile. "Close your eyes, if you value them." The whipmaster's man stepped forward, circling the leather above his head. "Parlor tricks won't save you, alien." Then Nashat's eyes snapped open fully, twin suns burning silver white. The courtyard exploded with light. Rufi's instincts kicked in. He dropped into a crouch, arm shielding his face. The glow wasn't warm. It was cold, biting, the kind of cold that made your breath catch. The air hummed with a vibration so deep it rattled his teeth. The men screamed, not in pain exactly, but in disorientation, as if the light tore through their senses, shredding balance and direction. Their whips fell to the ground, fingers clawing at their faces. Rufi risked a glance. The glow didn't just come from her skin. It shimmered in the air around her, bending reality like heat waves. The alien markings across her body had flared into living script, each symbol shifting and breathing on its own. She stepped forward, and the men staggered back. "You wanted a show," she said, her voice layered, resonating like two people speaking in perfect unison. "Now you'll remember it!" The first man bolted, crashing into a stack of crates. The second stumbled blindly into the wall, scrambling until his hands found the exit. The third, hood pulled back to reveal a scarred face, tried to stand his ground, but one more step from Nashat broke his resolve. He ran. The glow began to fade, the light retreating back into her veins until only faint silver remained. Her breathing was steady, but Rufi noticed the faint tremor in her fingers. Whatever that was, it cost her. He stood brushing dust from his jacket. "You could have done that in the market." Her eyes softened slightly, though her tone stayed guarded. "And what then?" "They'd call me a monster instead of a prize. Power changes nothing here. It only changes the flavor of the chains." He didn't argue. He understood. Sometimes you hid the knife until the last possible second. They moved quickly out of the courtyard, back into the labyrinth of alleys. The city lights grew brighter ahead, but the streets didn't feel safer. "You saved my life," she said after a while, her voice quieter now. "You saved mine," Rufi replied. She gave a short, almost amused exhale. "Then we're even." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "Even? Number I bought your freedom. Now I'm stuck with you until I'm sure you can keep it." Her silver eyes searched his face, as if trying to decide if he was serious or just foolish. "And what happens when keeping it gets you killed?" He grinned faintly. "I guess we'll find out." For the first time she smiled. Small, fleeting, but real. They reached a rooftop access ladder at the end of the block. Rufi climbed first, pulling himself onto the flat surface where the city stretched out before them in a sprawl of neon and shadow. Nashat joined him, moving with silent grace, despite the exhaustion tugging at her frame. From up here, the market was just a smear of color and sound, its cruelty lost in distance. The wind carried the faint tang of rain. Nashat stood at the edge, watching the skyline. "On my world," she said, "there's a word for what you did tonight. It means, someone who stands between the fire and the one it's meant to burn." "And what's the word?" Rufi asked. She glanced at him, a glimmer of warmth in her eyes. "There's no translation. Maybe that's why your people don't have many of them." He leaned on the railing beside her. "Then maybe you teach me. The word, the language, whatever it takes." For a moment they just stood there, two silhouettes against the restless glow of the city. Somewhere below, a distant shout echoed. Someone still searching, still hunting. The danger wasn't gone, but neither of them moved to leave. Because in a world where kindness was rare and survival was currency, $1 had bought more than freedom. It had bought trust, and trust once forged in defiance was harder to break than any chain.